something in me just said, I need you to get to work. And
Mm,
God was pulling me to really
mhm.
speak what I needed to. And I saw a lot of denunciation videos. I saw a lot of people speak against these experiences, but they weren't saying something that really needed to be addressed. Is how do we fix the problem? We could
Mm,
talk about, well, personally, individually, for me, I'm leaving because there's so many of these strongholds that have put me against towards the enemy and the things that I saw, but still there's something that we're not all the way saying. We're not completely finishing the story. We're still hiding something.
yes.
And it's that fear that really permeates that behavior. That's a long-winded answer there for you, Shantae.
Hello to all of you listeners and viewers. I am Shantae C, and welcome to the Freed Podcast, where identity is restored, deception is broken, and freedom begins. Today's episode is about rights when hazing becomes abuse. Tradition has a way of disguising harm. What's often defended as a rite of passage has far too long crossed the line into a violation of human dignity. In this episode, we are going to confront the uncomfortable questions many avoid asking. At what point do rights override rights? Under the banner of loyalty, legacy, and belonging, hazing has been normalized, minimized, and protected silence. But when submission is demanded, pain is justified, and abuse is reframed as character building, the issue is no longer tradition, it's trauma. Today's conversation challenges the systems that excuse harm, exposes the culture that rewards endurance over ethics, and gives voice to truths often buried beneath secrecy and fear. This episode, League of Listeners, isn't about sensationalism. It's about accountability, awareness, and the courage to call abuse what it is. Because no tradition is sacred enough to excuse harm, and no right should ever cost someone their rights. Okay, so this thought leader and cultural disruptor on this episode today, he may not have ever crossed the burning sands. He may not have taken the oath or bowed before the altar, but he did pay attention. And you probably have heard that some initiatives or some great ventures are born or raised from a legacy or raised from coming out. But this particular gentleman on today, his mission, his initiative has rise from the ashes of his process. And I am so glad that he is here on today. So, you all, League of Listeners, let us turn up the sounds. I want you to share it with a friend as we welcome my guest on today, Uncle Chris with Culture Unplugged. Say hello, sir.
How's it going? Thank you so much, Shantae. Thank you to all the listeners of Freed Podcast. Thank you.
I am so glad you're here. So, shall we just get into this conversation? Because I'm ready.
Let's get right in. There's so much to unpack, and I'm sure we have a wealth to discuss. So please.
Yes, yes. Let's get into this. Let's start because what I like about your initiative, I've had guests who have denounced, of course, and they've came out of the organizations, but your spin is different because, and I know you're going to share about it. Your process actually has birthed what you have now with Culture Unplugged. So we just want to hear the backstory that has led to this story that you have now. But let me put this plug out here, y'all. I want you to go back and I want you to listen to his testimony or his story on his YouTube channel because this is beyond Netflix. This is beyond YouTube Live and all of that. His story is bone chilling. So I want you to hear it. So share just a little bit. Back in your college times, how did you become interested in joining a fraternity?
Thank you again, Shantae, for giving me the space to be on their platform and sharing my testimony, my story. So let me kind of jump back a little bit. So this month would be 17 years. My experience happened in 2009. I was joining a very prominent HBCU. I'll just say it, Virginia State University, back in 2009. And at the time, I was, adamantly very excited about my experience. I went to a school prior to that, and then I had met someone who's a part of the organization that I was looking to be a part of. And so that experience, seeing how she actually, she was a sister to the fraternity that I was interested in, but I just seeing her in the way she was out there in the community, how she worked with the fraternity that eventually I was gonna decide to join. Seeing her part of her process, as far as in terms of just the activism and being out there, that had an interest and an effect on me. And I started to notice also that, on campus, especially at HBCU, if you want to kind of get your name out there, if you want to kind of set yourself apart, it's almost like it's like the unwritten rule, like you gotta do something, like be a part of something, be a part of some group, which would then require you then to, get out there and everybody knows you at that point. So for me, it was the admiration of, okay, how could I get out there and step out? And it led into, once I decided to go to Virginia State, it led into that next step where I started to be curious. I started to see the particular fraternity on campus, the parties, of course, that happened, the events. And I just remember asking someone who was a part of it. And that time led into, it was like, oh, well, you got to show up to the events. You got to, be out there. We got to see you, essentially. And so once I've already made my interest known, things kind of went pretty progressively once I've expressed that interest. And I just remember from the first onset, once I got that first text message from them that this was going to be something different, that I have no idea how this is going to go, but I think it's going to be a long ride. So that's essentially my first inception of it, my first feeling of it. And in no way, let me just say, there's no disrespect to any organization. What I'll share with you all as well. I look to just, again, creating the awareness and hopefully to save some lives.
At what point did you may have sensed, okay, they say it's brotherhood, but I don't know if this could go beyond this whole thing of just having this meeting, but it might can get physical to prove my brotherhood.
Correct. So this goes back to just, again, the conversation I remember having when I shared as well, that it's a progressive type of experience. And what I mean is that it starts off to be something where you're meeting up with guys you don't know who they are. They're your fellow students you may have seen in passing on a campus, but the real effect of it is that everyone's desiring to be a part of this group. And there's a lot of heightened need for discrepancy, or being very discreet, I should say. I'm sorry. So being very discreet, not saying much, not being seen as much. So I would say about a few weeks into it, there were expectations that were being asked, and so a lot of that was, making sure that you are wearing a certain type of clothes, like dark colored clothing, start coming in at a certain time at this particular location, like someone's house. You pull up there at a certain time, then it goes really sporadically or very quickly into, exercising. They basically try to test the waters to see what they can get you to do, essentially. So it's about, for them, that mind game of how bad do you start to really want it, and they start you off slight, and they see how you perform with it. And then after, and when I mean perform, it's like, can you be controlled, is what I'm getting at. Can I take you from whoever you were, break you down, and build you into what we want you to be? And a lot of that comes from our own, as a group, where, as a pledge line for us, we're wanting to be a part of this group. We start to understand, if we want to get there, we got to go through all this stuff that they say that it's just mental. It's all it is just a mental game. And once you get through this mental game, I promise you, you're gonna get so much of these opportunities going to get thrown at you. The girls going to go crazy over you, right? So that's what the promise is. It's almost like, if you want this type of experience to be a part of our club, to be a part of our fraternity, then all this hard work that you got to go through, the exercise, me slapping you, right? because all those things started to really be ahead once we had, I think it was our homecoming. So the
Mm.
homecoming that happened, that is when it started to get intense. And that's when I started to really feel like, wait a minute, what did I get myself into? But by that time, it was already too late.
Did you expect it would be some type of physical element to the process when joining the fraternity?
I didn't have much expectations. I think it was more so a lot of curiosity, a lot of ambiguity with it. I think that comes from just how just the structure of, the way the King's things were kept really secret. I think it's things that it started to hit me literally until it actually did. And that's when I started to, at that point, most of our pledge line had already was mind controlled at that point, and this was the only way that if you backed out, you'd be looked at as someone who was, nothing on campus. You'd have this target on your back, like a whole lot of
Mhm.
different threats that were made that, essentially would have, I thought at the time, would destroy the rest of my college experience. Because as for me, I'm just someone who's on campus, who's obviously in there to get education, but I wanted to have the full experience. I wanted to have the fun aspect, the memories, the legacy, and all that stuff. So a lot of what they were saying was, you're completely banned from total public life once you've dropped. So I didn't have an expectation that it would be to the level of where it took me. But I felt as though there were going to be some type of challenges that would have at least obviously been something that, okay, we felt like it would have been earned. We would have gotten our achievement. We would have been a part of it. Cool.
Mhm.
But I would have never in my wildest of dreams have, at once where it took me and how it damaged me, would have assigned myself up to say that this is something that I would be agreed to.
So, why are personal boundaries often viewed as weaknesses in these environments?
So, and that's a great question. I think a lot of what comes is there's a culture behind it. There's a legacy behind this experience. To not only be Black on the HBCU campus, but Black on HBCU campus trying to join a historically, well-known fraternity or sorority. And a part of that, it comes with the unspoken rule that this is just what it is. And
Mm.
your expectation is for you have to be pulled into this. You have to be beaten down. And I think what it is it comes from this idea that someone else went through this. If he could go through it, if she could go through it, she could put herself to the limits, and or he's close to death, and I should be the next person to do it. And I think that's where it becomes a serious harm, because we're seeing so many, and I know especially on my pledge line, young people, 19, 20 years old, all with the idea and passions about being a part of this, and but subjecting themselves. But it comes from, again, there's certain types of the word that's being put out there, just like any other type of, gang or any type of group that commits to being harm. You want to get this, you want to be this person, and I gotta see something. I gotta see you go through what I went through. One guy, I remember, he was an alumni. He was not even on campus, but he came to be a part of our interests, our groups or sessions, if you will. They're called sets. So you come there and be a part of our set. But he would be adamant and proud, like he was in the war, 50 years ago, and said, "Well, in my day, I was peeing blood." It's what he said. He said, "I was peeing blood," almost as excited to say that that was the achievement for the process of being beaten down and so physically, so brutally, to show that he had this stronghold and connection with this organization. That's what he was willing to do. He would die for this group. He would, and I thought, at the time, I was like, "This is he really serious about this? Is this the limits that someone is willing to go as far as their boundaries in terms of being connected to this?" I said, that's where I felt at that point, this is definitely a dangerous game. And if I hadn't have gone out or finished the way I did, I wouldn't have been alive with you talking tonight.
Mm. Mm. What behaviors are most commonly minimized or justified in hazing culture, in your experience? Looking back at it, what were some of those behaviors?
A lot of that comes from the just historical aspect of arrogance. Where I've done my research on hazing really came into its prime just after Vietnam War, where a lot of the soldiers who are coming back from the war are basically teaching the same type of trainings that they've experienced when they were in the war, and or part of that experience and bringing it on campus. So a lot of that shift started to happen around then. And then it's reached its prominence right around the late 70s, early 80s, and it just kept on going. We see in our first cases where it involved Robert Bazile, who passed at the hands of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And so we know the historical aspects of where it comes from. The way it's shifted today, obviously, it has been the celebration of that culture, and that culture permeates that the system has now become so systemic, where it's just been a continuous pass down of, I went through it, your mama went through it, your grandmother went through it. So if that's all you knew, if you're even it's some families I've talked to, I spoke to a couple who joined two Divine Nine organizations. And they told me straight up in that video how it started was, you knew what you signed up for. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? You're saying to me that what I'm signing up for, I already have the impression that I'm going to have to be broken down in such a way that I might not survive. But what does that really mean? And so the way that they shared it with me, and it was like as a couple, husband says, yeah, if you want to get on, you got to go through this. You got to be allowed to, be put in those situations. And the woman was, who was a part of the sorority, says, well, there's a lot of things that I did go through that at the time I was young. I was just trying. I was impressionable. I was just trying to fit myself in. And later on, but I wouldn't agree to it. And I wouldn't agree my kids to go through it. So it's a mindset of the behaviors of the environment of, especially being on a campus, is so much pressure, especially on not only being on a college campus, but on a college campus that's a HBCU as well. There's that, that pressure. This is what it's got to be. There's no other way. And it even involves groups that are not Divine Nine organizations. It could be the dance team. It could be the football team. It could be, I talked to someone who shared their story and told me flat out on Howard's campus, allegedly, if you want to join the church group. And I said, you got to go through something harmful. I said, what? I had never gone to a church, and I had to go ahead and, before I get to the altar, I got to bend over to get, hit by a paddle. I said, that doesn't make any sense here. We got a problem. This is an issue that is gotten out of control. And I speak against it, really not as exploiting it or anything like that, but I speak against it because I stayed silent for 15 years. And I just, one day, a year prior to the reason why I decided to do this movement, a year prior to that, I had just said, I'm ready to tell my story. And I did a little video. It's the first one that I, on the subject of it. Before that, my channel was more so about mentorship. But once I shared it, I see a lot of comments. I wasn't even responding. I just let a lot of comments come in. Caleb Wilson's death happened, and something in me just said, I need you to get to work. And God was pulling me to really speak what I needed to. And I saw a lot of denunciation videos. I saw a lot of people speak against these experiences, but they weren't saying something that really needed to be addressed. Is how do we fix the problem? We can talk about, well, personally, individually, for me, I'm leaving because there's so many of these strongholds that have put me against towards the enemy and the things that I saw, but still there's something that we're not all the way saying. We're not completely finishing the story. We're still hiding something.
Yeah.
And it's that fear that really permeates that behavior. That's a long-winded answer there for you, Shantae, but it's the fear that keeps people binded. And I even was questioning, you start realizing, open your mind up. So why are we so open in church to say about all these different bad habits that we do or we have, right? People who have issues or struggling with infidelity, overeating, or falling by temptation, but they're church leaders who are part of these organizations, but never speak up about the dangers of hazing and being a part of any group. And that even goes as far as, the Masons and such. So all these different types of groups that can pose a risk, no one was speaking up about it. And that's where I said, you know what, if that's my ministry where I've got to, then that's my work and calling.
At what point does participation stop being voluntary and become a violation of personal rights?
Love that question. So I would say I can recall back to me, and I think from my experience, this was so I started in the fall of 2008. My experience, as far as wanting to be a part of it, we had an event called the Homecoming, and Homecoming, obviously, it's also alumni coming back, but it was everyone that was just there and showing up. And aside from me being beaten or hit, there was this aspect of, at the time, my thought was, there's some camaraderie here, there's some family here, people coming back and they're having a good time, and they drinking together, and all that looked, from us, we're like, this is our pledge line, just kind of looking at the window of what it would look like for us to be a part of it. And we all kind of came out of that room and said to each other, like, man, I can't wait. We get our nail, we get our colors on, and we get to enjoy and eat with them, and we get to enjoy and talk about some experiences, and we were just all focused on what that window of what it would look like to be a part of this, but we never really took a stance on what we already had, right? As people, as individuals. And I think what eventually happened is that we were put into this mindset that in order to get there, we would have to subject ourselves to do whatever it is that they wanted us to do, essentially. And it's what carried us into the following year in January. This is January 2009. We already had basically a month or a couple of weeks to go on break, be with family for Christmas and New Year's. We had to get back to campus start this process with them. Like within the first week of January, it was pretty much green light. Just you're getting right into it. The exercises, the putting you into this disturbing position called getting into cut, getting hit from a paddle. So once those things started to, even at its height, started to get more intense, right? So you're doing all these things to show how serious you are to be a part of it. We felt like we were stuck, and mentally, and a lot of people can't conceptualize what that looks like. But when you isolate someone from their family, from their friends, you're not supposed to be seen on campus. You're supposed to be a shadow in the eyes of this organization. You're behind everything that you love and like, just so that you can show your alliance to this is how you can be controlled and manipulated, and thinking that this is the only sole way to thrive in life. And if you're impressionable and you're looking to just, at that point, you're stuck. You're literally mind controlled in terms of how this particular organization or group on campus is going to treat you. And so I felt stuck. There's many a nights I literally, aside from the physical pain that I experienced, there was that missing piece, and I was just asking God, when is this supposed to be over? How much longer will this be? Can I get through this, and survive? Because a lot of that I just hadn't know. I have any idea, but there were other people that were also saying, hey, on my pledge line, saying, hey, you got to keep going. If you drop, none of us goes, or so that pressure, the psychological pressure as well, is very real.
Why do some people defend the very systems that harm them?
So I think, again, it is that mind control, that mind control of, if I want it, how bad do I want it, right? And I think after a certain point, you're not gonna be willing to just let go of that, because you've already went through so much. It's hard to say, I'm not, I'm gonna be done with it. Like, it's like you've invested yourself emotionally, spiritually, physically. You've put yourself so much far into deep. There's a movie that comes to mind. It's called Into Deep. And I think it's with Mackay Pfeiffer or one of those guys, and then Kujay. But he's in so deep in his role as a detective, he eventually finds himself almost, even catching a habit, because I think he was a part of, like, bringing down this big time kingpin or this gang or whatever the case may be. But he had to put himself through a lot of that same experiences as if he was in that life, even though he was against it, if that makes sense. And he found himself so deep into it that he couldn't really just get out, or say, he had to be pulled out, if that makes sense. So for me, at the height of my experience, I remember it was it was the last, maybe the second to last night, but it was one of the nights where I had, and being frank and open with you all, I had hot sauce that was poured in my pants or whatever, underneath my pants, as a form of allegiance to understanding that I could go through some kind of pain, or how much more could I go through? And the pain of that, and mixed in with the pain of having like blunt force trauma on my right behind cheek, to be honest, was very uncomfortable. It was very, very, very painful. And I remember just felt like every night I'm suffering. I am suffering in this. I just need some type of remedy to help free me from that pain. And I remember just going to seeking out like a school psychologist. I remember saying, I don't know how much longer I can go through this. You need to tell me, like, what am I doing wrong? Because none of this is getting to the end here for me. And I was questioning a lot of my own safety. I felt like, ending it, to be honest with you. And I rebuke, just sharing that out there with anyone, I rebuke the spirit of self-harm. But I felt those real things. And just sharing it with someone, the psychologist was like, if you continue to go through this, you may not survive the next day. You may not. And I didn't even know I was, dying. For those who are listening, I had contracted a disease called MRSA, which is a blood infection that could have been very dangerous, essentially, and it was in my system. But had I not done those things, had I not at least sought some type of medical remedy, whether both psychological, but also an intermediary type of bandage, even to keep myself from being in pain as much, I wouldn't be, again, talking to you all right now. But that's how scary it was, and that's how locked in it had me feeling.
So how does trauma bonding keep hazing cycles alive?
So, Shante, I think it comes a lot from legacy, and the aspect of the question is, how bad do you want it, right? Like I've just mentioning earlier, how the systems kind of continue to keep that aspect of it alive. And if you've seen someone who's, a family member or a friend who's even a part of it, they're so very much invested in, even 20 years past, as if they got kids of their own. They're telling me, they would have their kids be a part of it too. They would have their kid, it would even induct their own kids and put them through that kind of risk and pain, all in the name of the culture of it. And so it's a deep culture on these campuses, especially at HBCUs, at PWIs as well. I don't say that there's no campus that's without it, but there's just this aspect for us where we all gotta you all gotta do something extra in terms of being a part of this particular group or that particular group. So the trauma bonding, again, it's backed by the peer pressures of everyone who's involved, and even those who are not involved. If I if I talk to someone, even on a campus, if I had a panel where it was open for anyone to just be a part of on an HBCU, not everyone's gonna openly talk and say, well, this is something you got to go through, you got to do. They're gonna say, well, we're a non-hazing organization.
Mhm,
That's
mhm,
the first thing you'll hear. And it's almost like
mhm,
a front. It's almost like, the person who is, trying to sell you a dream or whatever the case may be, and you're thinking, okay, everything is good, I'm going to be a cop and I'm not going to get hurt, or so it's like you can't buy into that logic. You can't buy into that feeling, to that lie. And so it's just the arrogance behind it. It's the legacy behind it. The people who are even the administrators, they know about it. The people who are, because especially a lot of them are also a part of those organizations as well. But they're either going to be open and honest and say, hey, yeah, this happened, yeah, there was some things that I had to do, but a lot of times it's glamorized. It's almost I don't say sensationalized, but it's just like romanticized. That's the word
mhm.
I'm looking for. So it's just a romanticized experience. Yeah, I went through this, and we had this, and we had these experiences, and they connected you too. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up. I almost forgot. They'll connect you with whoever crossed in your number. So you have a pledge line where you have the shortest person in the front, you have the tallest person in the back, You're given a number, whoever, obviously based on where you're positioned in the line. And the person who crossed in the organization with your number is the person you connect with. And even prior sets as well, people who crossed in the past on that campus. And so you'll connect with them and you talk to them. And the first couple of things is say, hey, look, man, you're gonna be all right. We're gonna cheer you on at probate. What do you know about the founders? Who do you know about the information? I'm a Fortune 500 lawyer. I'm an attorney. I'm a doctor now. All these things. I got 3 kids, but you're on the phone with me, rationalizing why I should have my behind whipped.
Yeah, yeah.
Why I should have my health decline.
Yeah.
That should alarm anybody, right? And I almost want to be on the phone and say, well, you got 3 kids. 2 of them, in college right now. Would you want something to happen to them? Would you want to get a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning telling them that your kid is not coming home tonight? I mean, so you have to start thinking and questioning, like, how are we setting ourselves up for danger? How are we setting ourselves up for destruction? What type of manipulation are we telling ourselves? And why are we so focused on replicating the hell experience? Because that's what we're doing. We're inviting the enemy to come in and destroy what he has for us, right? Because we're all in this place of despair and pain and sickness. And I mean, just think about it. The weight of that is so powerful and it is so destructive. And if you think about it, you say, well, if I am someone who's a father, who's a pastor, who's someone who is even a police officer, right? We're part of these organizations, and I'm saying that this is the way it should be. Who are you really? What strongholds that keep you burdened in or keep you locked in that makes sense? So that's the part that I am against. Every time I do a video, every time I speak for the victims who cannot speak for themselves, I am angry. I am mad because it could have happened to me, is number one, but we are robbing too many young people, their futures destroyed, families ripped apart, the parents who have to live with the grief every single day. It is that pain that we don't see in our community because we choose to ignore it. He could have been this, he could have been that, right? It's like why are we so, the word I'm trying to use it, we're not genuine enough. We're not really being genuine to this effort and this real issue here.
Yeah. And I know it's been a minute, but did you have any effects, if any?
Shantae, I would say the first 3 months after coming home was brutal. I had what we call necrosis of the tissue. So my right gluteus cheek were pretty much dead flesh. Okay. So what happened is the doctor had to surgically remove that flesh, or else I would have gotten into something called sepsis, which is pretty much your infection that comes into your blood. It is fatal. Okay. So that surgery had to happen. This was the week of Valentine's Day. I remember very clearly that Monday. By the next day, I remember waking up extreme pain, and I had to get my gauze changed, and my mom was holding my hand. And I just remember how cold I felt. Cold, I felt in deep pain, and from the moment the doctor had to even remove the bandage from the area, it was incredibly painful. It was I wouldn't wish on anyone. But this is going back 17 years. I still remember it till this day, right? After those 3 months, after that experience happened, I'm still suffering in terms of the weight of fear from how I was viewed on campus, because it was all over the local news. It was talked about online. So I'm reading the comments when I physically could, and they weren't good. A lot of it, was based on, especially at that time, that, it was a focus on, well, he snitched, he did this, why did he do this? He couldn't do this. Why did he select him? Like a bunch of attacking of me, and not even enough knowing the full story or the gravity of the weight that I was feeling. It definitely affected me through my nightmares. I had plenty of nights where I couldn't sleep. I dreamt about what experiences that I did have, and it was horrible. Anytime I would see someone a part of that organization, or group, whether it was someone I didn't know completely or just out and about, I just remember feeling very anxious, very anxious. The anxiety would come, and I would feel like I was beside myself because there was so much of that experience where I lived with these people, day in, day out. From the nighttime, I'd see them almost every day. So you're going through that, and all the experience that happened, you're ripped apart from that. You feel almost like, in a strange way, a fish out of water because I was a part of it. I was used to it. But other part of it, I was betrayed. I was left alone. I'm the only person of this pledge line to have gone through this severity. And there's something wrong here, and I don't understand why. So all of those things, even until this day, where I may feel uncomfortable, I wouldn't go to Greek organization parties or events. It just wasn't my thing in terms of me having a presence there. It didn't mean much for me to be there anymore. I felt like I've surpassed it. I've gotten past it. I just now at this point, I'm more so, I want to save someone from that experience, because no person should go put themselves, first of all, through that, or be locked into that, or feel like they're, in order to be something, that they have to do that. But it still has been a road. It has been a challenging one. But I think through these stories, everything that I've shared, just being on camera and talking about the stories of those who have been harmed, has been my own therapy, I would say. But it's been God's calling truly for me to continue, because it's something that most people, I guess, they are oblivious to it. They don't know the full story, or they may have heard stories, but they don't understand the true weight of how serious this is.
So when did you come to the point, hey, I'm going to use my story now to build this movement, this initiative?
Yeah.
When did it come as a moment, a full circle moment for you to birth this?
Sure, absolutely. So Caleb Wilson's story hit me like a brick, like a ton of bricks. Caleb was a young man who passed at Southern University from basically blunt force trauma that hit his chest. Okay. And this was in the hands of allegedly Omega Psi Phi fraternity incorporated members of that campus. And when I saw the pictures, first of all, of who he was, seeing the again, another story and grief from a parent as well, I thought about all the stories before him that I saw, who were people who died, both black and white and Asian and everything else in between. There were human lives that were being lost. And matter of fact, the same year that I was going through my experience in 2009, another young man by the name of Donnie Wade Jr. had died at the hands of an organization of a fraternity. And all these things had happened, and I had shared my story a year prior and said something in me truly just said, you need to act. You need to get out there. You need to start sharing not only your testimony, but the weight of others. And I felt as though, we're in a new time. We have TikTok where young people are coming out to share their grievances and their experiences and just their testimony, right? Their testimony about real things that have happened to them. And I said, this might be the time. This might be the most impactful time to reach them and really help engage and help people come out of the dark and share what's happened. And from the very first time after Caleb's story, and I started to share, so many people, both good and bad, spoke either for it or not. And I was shocked at the reception of it. Most people thought, I'm only targeting historically black colleges and fraternities and organizations, but I just had to quickly say, no, there's so much more to the story that we have to also include, and that includes everybody who's been affected by this. This isn't a black issue. This isn't a so white issue. This is a systemic issue where we have to come to grips with it
Right.
as a culture and attack it and say, this, we can't have it anymore. We can't do this. This way is killing people, too many people. Since the year 2000, Shantae, there's been over 105 deaths related to hazing. If that number alone does not shock you, or any parent who's watching this, I don't know what else would, because that number, it keeps on growing every year. there's been at least one hazing related death. I think in the year 2020, of course, when COVID happened, probably the only year when we didn't have it or we didn't lose a life. So we've got to address the bigger issue here with it. And for me, this is back in March of last year. Ever since then, I've committed to telling the stories, putting out videos. We have a podcast now where I also actually today a very unfiltered review of my testimony is on the podcast for the Culture Unplugged. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Apple Spotify and Amazon Music. But we do this all in an effort. I do this as an effort to help save another parent's child. And I think that's the utmost life commitment to this that I feel makes a lot of sense, is that it's an ongoing commitment. And I truly pray for many more lives to be saved. And we don't have to have any more Caleb Wilsons that pass, or because Caleb, for me, I thought was like a brother to me. He was like someone in my family, smart, intelligent. He's a part of this marching band, had a lot of life of promise, and that was robbed. That was stolen from him. When you have those strongholds, and I think for a lot of people, they keep those strongholds heavy, it continues the culture of it. And we've got to be, as stewards of our community, as those who are parents that are watching, we have to get serious about demanding change and asking more questions. If my child is desiring to, first of all, be a part of this campus, in any group that he or she decides, what is that experience going to look like for them? Are they going to be dehumanized and they're going to have to go through all these physical, pain to be a part of it? Will my child even make it home? Like I have to kind of ask these questions, because there's just too many young people that are losing their lives behind, their admiration of joining groups. I'm not against those who are joining groups if it means that are going to be something positive happening and that they're not going to be hurt, they're not going to be physically or have to spiritually change who they are, and like that kind of stuff I'm never going to be for. But I am asking and I'm encouraging, because I understand that the college experience and what that looks like, but I have to encourage and say that there are schools that have to do better in terms of making sure that these organizations are not, first of all, putting their hands on these kids, and then also encouraging them to drink. Where a lot of organizations who encourage that, and especially on PWIs, where there's just this culture of you have to do this in order to, be a part of this group. And so we've got to demand the change, and we have to have full transparency. I think that is my ultimate goal, is for anyone who's watching, but any kid who's desiring to be a part of a group, that their life will be saved. That's my true feeling, because what I found early on in the process of me doing this was that I needed to have supporters from all walks of life, even those who were once a part of it and said, you know what, I'm turning my life around. I truly love what you do, Chris. I'm giving this up because that's not truly what God's way would want. And I've had those people say, I'm in alliance with you. I agree with you. This is, in my campus, we never tolerated that. So a lot of people who stepped up and then supported and then gave me their respect from their point of view. And so I truly appreciate those who've reached out.
Speaking of institutions, why do you think institutions struggle to confront hazing, honestly?
Great question. And it's a loaded response. So I'm going to try to simplify it, but a lot of it is money. A lot of it is money. There are organizations who really spend thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to have their organization on that campus, or the fact that the school wants to increase their admissions. They want their admissions of students. Every student is $1 for that school. As black and white as it is, the school business is a business. Mm-hmm. And when it comes down to it, these schools recognize this as, if their homecomings have these organizations who's, drawing the crowds. If you've never been on HBCU campus and if you've never gone to a homecoming, HBCU homecoming, what you would most likely see is that there's crowds, obviously, of alumni students who come back to gain that same experience that they've had when they were, obviously in undergrad or grad school. But a lot of it too is the excitement around these organizations and what they do on the campus. And with them, it's a cultural phenomenon, and that's a part of the Black experience when it comes to HBCU as well. It's a part of, like, we show up for this. We show up to see the steps. We show up to see the strolls. And for some reason, that's the fun appeal of it, is there's this appeal to it. And a lot of it too is pervasiveness. It's the sexual appeal to it. So all those things mixed in is what continues to keep this rapid growth of it. And it takes someone who just says, you know what, that's just not who we really are, or that's not what the true aspect of it is, but that's what it's become. And so that's what continues the legacy of it. And I think that's really what keeps that thriving. You know what I mean? I think that's the core aspect of it.
Got one more question for you.
Yeah.
What myths about hazing need to be dismantled immediately?
So I think one of the biggest myths about hazing, that it's, this experience that you're gonna have, and it's going to be for a short period of time, or you'll get through it if you just stick with your brothers. And so there are a lot of these ideas that people come up with. I think for those who have been a part of it is number one. For those who've not been a part of it, who just know others who have, and they continue to say things like, this is just, it's more mental than anything else, right? It's much more than that. It's much more than that. And I think that's a big red flag for those who say, that if you haven't been hit, or that's not truly, you're not really a part of it, and this and that. Like, a lot of these things that people put out there and say in terms of things to encourage you to keep going through it. Or let's see, something else that I've come across a lot of is that I'm here thinking now, because a lot of the things that kept me, or thinking that it was going to be something easy, is that, it's a short period of time. And, like, so a lot of this idea that it's not going to be as heavy as it was is a straight up lie. And I think that's the thing we've got to attack. That's not true. So I think if first of all, if parents could be fully knowledgeable of what their kids are getting into, I mean, because they're the ones that are still financing their experience of being to college, but also students who are listening and watching this and saying, I could get through it. I could do this, and it won't even take too much of my time. It's all lies. You still got to have a full college, experience about going to class, finishing class, being able to graduate. Your health, you don't want to put your health in danger to anyone else. You don't want to have your own physical well-being put in the hands of someone who's 20 times older than you. They're in their 50s, 60s years old sometimes. So you want to be, first of all, cautious, and you want to look at the red flags as well. If you're even a sense of feeling like, in order to be a part of this group, that you got to go through this, you absolutely don't have to be a part, do any of those things. That's set up by that particular campus, that particular chapter on that campus. And what continues to kind of keep those behaviors alive is when you have those who try to permeate that, put that on you. So don't get influenced, don't get locked into that. Follow your heart, truly understand, ask the right questions, that you have full transparency on what your experience would look like in joining a group. Hazing is illegal in most states. It is illegal. There's defined laws on that as well. So be understanding that, you're being a part of this. Things can go extremely left, extremely fast. And before you know it, you're either going to be in a hospital harmed, or unfortunately no longer with us. So I truly want everyone to just open their eyes up, understand those red flags, understand that no one can make you do anything that you don't want to do. And just kind of understand that. I think you'll be just fine.
We are at the end of this, and this has been rich. And I want you viewers, you listeners out here, to replay this, because this was great. And he shared so much wealth from experience, from the depth and authenticity of him being a thought leader. So share with us how we can stay connected with you and all that you have coming up and continue with culture. Share with us.
Thank you so much, Shantae, for just having me on your show. If you're interested and would love to keep on to supporting what we're doing, you can visit our website at cultureunplugged.com. We have an actual website. You can visit us there to show your support. We are in collaboration with hazinginfo.org and stophazing.org, which have real-time data on hazing on every state. And it is exceptionally well, especially knowing that we also have seen the first federal passage really against hazing called the Stop Campus Hazing Act that was passed in 2024. So lots of changes with that. You can keep up with that on our YouTube channel at Cultured Unplugged. Visit our TikTok as well. We also post frequently on that platform. So I highly encourage you to stay locked in with me. You can also find me on Instagram. If you have any questions, you want to shoot me a DM. If you want to share your own story, even with me, you can do so at coveredandcultured@gmail.com. I can also read your experience for you if you'd like anonymously. Not a problem. I appreciate it so much. This is where the silence ends.
That's what I love about Uncle Chris. He's gonna share it. If you don't want to share it, like he'll share it for you. He's gonna give you the stats. Data don't lie, y'all. So get hooked up with Uncle Chris with Culture Unplugged. This has been our time, you all. Till next time, remember, freedom is not a movement. This is a mandate. Till next time. Bye.
Bye.